Time for some trivia. This city, known as the Jewel of the Midwest, as well as America's only non-coastal major metropolitan city and a consistent winner of the best city in the United States. Of course, we're talking about Chicago. This is a Living in Chicago channel, so I'm sure you guessed that already. However, today we're gonna be breaking down Chicago and specifically what it costs to live and the real numbers associated with living here in this beautiful city of Chicago. Chicago is a city with a diverse economy, world-class universities and sports teams, and miles of beaches and waterfront along beautiful Lake Michigan. That said, living here and having access to this comes with a cost. However, it's actually much cheaper than you think to live here. And that's why about 3 million people choose to call Chicago home. Stay tuned to find out why Chicago, as one of the major metropolitan cities, is incredibly affordable compared to some of the others, such as New York, San Francisco, and Miami. And you'd be surprised by how cheap it actually is to live here as it compares to the national average. Also, stay till the end as I'm gonna be breaking down my #1 largest single expense on a monthly basis. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jordan Pyle. I'm your go-to Chicago real estate agent. And if this info today has been valuable, please do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're feeling extra generous, share this with a couple friends. And if you're making a move to Chicago or you're moving around in Chicago in 2023, my team and I would be honored to help you achieve your real estate goals. So feel free to just text me at the number on the screen and we can get you set up for success. All right, so that's it. Let's jump on into today's video talking about the cost of living in Chicago. According to Numbio's Cost of Living Index, which factors the cost of consumer goods prices, including groceries, restaurants, transportation, and utilities, Chicago scores 82.23 out of 100. This means that the cost of living in Chicago is about 20% less than the baseline, which is New York City. And New York City is what sets the standard or the baseline for the cost of living index. While Chicago is actually 23% more expensive than the national average, based on all the perks that you have while living here, you actually get a lot for your money. So as you can see on the screen here, we're gonna be breaking down a few different expense categories, as well as some other associated costs that I personally have living here in Chicago. But as you can see here on the chart, you have your overall cost of living, which is 22% higher than the national average. You have housing, which comes in at 54% higher. You have utilities, which are actually 3% lower than the national average. Groceries coming in at 6% higher, and then transportation at 24% higher than the national average. So before we jump into these different expense categories, you need to know that Illinois has a flat 4.95% income tax rate. All right, as I mentioned, I'm gonna save my #1 expense for last. So before we get to that, we're gonna start out with transportation. Living in Chicago and how this relates to transportation, really there's two different sides of the coin. There's the people that take public transportation to and from work and commuting around the city. And then you have people like myself that pretty much drive everywhere and have a car here downtown. So if we're talking about public transportation, it's actually a very lucrative and widely used system because we have the L, right? We have the train line that runs north and south of the city and is very accessible and it's very efficient in order to get to and from different parts of the city. Also, as it relates to public transportation, some people choose to take bus lines, and also depending on where you're living, sometimes you have to take a bus line to an L stop and vice versa so that you can make sure that you're getting to where you're going in the most efficient and time-sensitive way. Other than public transit, you also have Ubers and Lyfts and different rideshare services that you can take advantage of, and I would use these sparingly because in Chicago you obviously have traffic, so depending on what time you're trying to leave or what time you're trying to go somewhere, if you're hitting rush hour traffic, you can have surge pricing on, for example, Uber, which can drive your cost of taking an Uber ride through the roof. However, this can be efficient and this can make sense financially if you're planning things out and you're doing it the right way. Now, on the other side of the coin is someone like myself that drives everywhere. As a real estate agent, obviously I need to have a car so I can drive clients around, and I'm gonna break down a few of the different expenses associated with having a car here in Chicago. The first thing is gonna be your car payment. And luckily I do not have a car payment, but let's just say you're factoring in about $350 a month for your car payment. Associated with that, you have your car insurance. I pay about $115 a month. I also have a flawless driving record. So if you also have a flawless driving record, it'll be somewhere in that 100 to 150 range. And if you don't, well, you might be paying more. The other thing that I pay on a monthly basis is I pay $200 a month to actually park my car in the garage here at my building. So this is a garage space. It is not heated, but it's covered and you don't have to shovel snow. You don't have to make sure you're moving your car for street cleaning. So paying a little bit extra to have a designated spot in a garage here in Chicago, I think is worth all the money in itself. And some of these costs can run from anywhere, let's say from $150 a month, and in some areas of the city up to like $400 a month to park your car. Now this is basically overnight parking or long-term parking on a monthly basis, but when you're going to and from different places, there's a lot of opportunities and there's gonna be a lot of situations where you're gonna be paying to park on the street. And the beauty of this is you have the Park Chicago app, which allows you to do this all on your mobile device, but this is gonna cost you anywhere between like 50 cents and $4 per hour, depending on what street you're parking on. So if you're staying somewhere for 2 hours, in the most expensive, it might be $8 to $10. In some different areas, if it's less traffic and less congested, you might be spending, let's say, $2 to $4 for 2 hours. And the last piece as it relates to transportation is your gas. And in Chicago, obviously gas nationwide has been all over the place. It went way high earlier this year and now it's kind of settling back down. But the average here in Chicago is $3.50 per gallon. So jumping over to utilities, utilities is a category that you're actually going to save a little bit of money as compared to the national average. The cost of electricity and internet is about 10% less than the national average, with your average energy bill on a monthly basis being somewhere around $100 to $140 per month. A couple of the different service providers that you're gonna wanna be aware of are People's Gas, which is obviously your gas company, and then Commonwealth Edison, AKA ComEd, which is your electricity provider. All right, so now we're gonna jump over to groceries, and instead of going through all the different items, I'm just gonna throw up a little chart on the screen here so you can see some of the common items that you'll find in typical households and what the costs associated with them are. But on average, it's gonna be about 8% more expensive than the national average for groceries in Chicago. Some of the grocery chains that you might see throughout Chicago are places like Aldi, as well as Jewel Osco, probably being the two most popular ones. You also have Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Mariano's, and a few different others. All right, so we broke down groceries, transportation, and utilities. So now for the most expensive single line item that I have in my expenses on a monthly basis, which is housing. So housing is the most significant expense for most American households. The cost of living in certain cities takes into account both the price of rent and the price of a home. The average monthly rent in Chicago comes in at $2,224 a month, while home prices circle around $563,000. Housing is 56% higher in Chicago than in the rest of the nation. According to the team at Go Banking Rates, homeowners need to earn about $85,000 per year to live comfortably in Chicago. Now on the other side, renters need to earn about $95,000 per year, and about 50% of the whole entire population in Chicago is actually renters. So we always say that Chicago is one of the most rent-heavy, if not the most rent-heavy city in the country. Despite these high rates, the survey still ranks Chicago as one of the most affordable major cities in the country, especially compared to places like Philadelphia, San Diego, and Washington, D.C. All right, so that rounds out housing, transportation, groceries, and utilities. So lastly, here's just a few other common items that you may be purchasing on a regular basis. So for me to get a haircut, it costs me about $35 every single time, and I go about once a month. If you're looking for a movie ticket, this is gonna be about $15. And if you like to drink, I don't drink often, but when I do drink, I drink Dos Equis. No, I'm just kidding. I actually drink old fashions, and a typical old fashioned throughout Chicago, you know, you can get one maybe for like $12, $13 at kind of your dive bar, but if you're going bougie, this could go anywhere from $18 to $20 per old fashioned. So now obviously everyone's situation is different. You know, some people live a more lavish lifestyle, some people live a little bit more minimalistic. So take all of this with a grain of salt. However, these are some of the common items and some of the common expense categories that you'll have when you're actually deciding whether or not you want to live in Chicago and the cost of living associated with it. So if this has been helpful today, please do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe. And again, if you're super generous, share this with a couple friends. And if you're thinking about making a move to Chicago or you're looking for a new place to live, my team and I would be honored to help you achieve your real estate goals. So feel free to just text the number here on the screen and we can get you set up for success. So without further ado, we'll see you on the next video. Peace.